side if he hasn't already. The wonders of technology connects us, brings us all together, enables us to do so much, but sometimes it's one tiny little checkbox or a restart that's needed to make it all run smoothly. So we'll just roll with it here. Something that I'm sure all of you there are very familiar with over the past couple of weeks. And before we go any further, remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to learn, and you have to want to improve. Make sure you're letting your students know that, as well as your teachers and your administrators, even when they're running when they're running webinars and meetings. I'm going to try my best to keep an eye on the chat as well. We'll take on both roles here. For those of you that don't recognize my voice, I'm Kevin Byers. I'm calling in today from sunny Australia. Not quite sunny yet, still a little early in the morning here. I'm working most recently in my competency-based work with Empower directly as a customer service representative. And on the other line here, which is unfortunately muted, we have Sean. Sean is our go-to guy if you have many questions about implementation, strategic change, really looking big picture for us, trying to help new clients get on board and stuff like that. So if you have any questions following this webinar, make sure you reach out to Sean. He's the guy to talk to. We'll make sure to put his contact information up on the screen for you at the end here. Just a few logistics and housekeeping. If you are not aware, we have a Twitter feed, a Facebook page. Our website, empowerlearning.net, is getting a bit of a makeover here soon. Really trying to focus on some of our most essential tools and resources that we're developing and working on. You can submit questions by clicking on the questions tab on the left side of the window there, but you can also throw the questions just in the chat there. If you happen to have your chat open, you see a question that you know the answer to. I recognize some names here on this webinar already. We've got some experts in the room. Feel free to chime in and help each other out as well. We do not need to be the be-all and end-all and the source of all knowledge about Empower and competency-based. You guys have a lot of great stuff to share with each other as well, so feel free to keep that chat busy. I will try to check that chat a little bit throughout the presentation, but I'll circle back and take another look at the very end here. We are going to be recording all of our webinar sessions. If you've missed any or there's some that you want to watch again, we'll make sure those are available on our if you're a participant, they'll be mailed out to you, but we'll have them available within our knowledge base as well in Empower. And then the handouts, if you don't already have, there's a couple of handouts connected with this. If you don't already have access to those will be made available at the end of the webinar as well. So we saw a real need. Things have changed in the past couple of weeks, and we saw a real need for schools and teachers to understand how to teach remotely, things that we've always thought about, things we always thought we did well, but until we got pushed into this unique situation that we're in now, things weren't real. If we had a desire to learn this, but we didn't have a pressing need. So we've really been trying to take a step back and figure out how can we support the people that we already work with. Not that we are necessarily, how do we get brand new clients and bring stuff in? We see some of that going on, which is totally fine. But we're trying to figure out how do we support those people that we work with? And then how do they then support their teachers and support their students? And we've really boiled this down into this quick guide for teaching remotely. And this is one of the handouts that will be made available to you guys, really breaking it down into 7 components about creating an online classroom, deploying your learning plan, figuring out how you group based on your needs to address those students and learners' needs, creating this clear expectations, obviously collaboration. We're going to be talking a bit about that today, managing student work and monitoring pace. So we have a series of webinars that touch on one or multiple of these components of this quick guide that we put together. We've also got the, let's see those there. Apparently it is not cycling through my animations. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch over and share my screen instead so we can see those. Bear with me one moment. We'll just share the presentation instead. You will have those slides just as those PDFs there. But this is the webinar series that we have been presenting. This is the third in the series. We've got a few more coming up. Our managing student work and our monitoring pace are coming up the 31st and the 1st. And then we have creating our online classroom, where we hope to involve some teachers with the boots on the ground there. So when we're looking at this remote teaching, how do we help teachers and leaders figure out what this needs to look like for people who are actually doing this work? We broke it down into these 7 categories. I know this version is a little bit difficult to read. This will be one of the handouts, one of the PDFs that you have access to. We really try to figure out, how do we create a rubric for self-reflection for these teachers? We have all these rubrics and they have all these teaching standards that teachers are well aware of. But how do we help support them in their professional growth in this new environment? Because while there is some pedagogy that remains exactly the same, there is some that is quite different. You need to look at it from a different lens, or bring in a whole different component which never existed. So we tried to identify some of the key components of each of these sections and put them out in a rubric for the teachers to self-evaluate with. I know that at the district that I work with as well, Westminster Public Schools in Denver, Colorado, we're taking this self-reflection and then we are turning it into an online resource that teachers can check what they feel they're doing well. They can add some reflections, create some goals and next steps to continue to help support our teachers as they are continuing to better themselves as educators. We're making this hopefully going to make this a fairly informal tool. It's not part of their official evaluation or anything like that. We aren't quite there yet, but we're just trying to help the teachers not only realize what they can do better, but what they're also doing well right now. We need to recognize all of that. So today, inspiring virtual collaboration. Got some key things that I want to point out today and make sure in your minds, trying to disprove the idea that school's closed. School's not closed. We're going to look at the synchronous collaboration. That's the collaboration that happens live. The asynchronous that happens not necessarily live, not face-to-face. And then also bringing in parents and guardians into collaborating. We are uniquely in a unique position now where we can build collaboration and communication that maybe in the past we haven't needed to or felt the need to, and using some tools and some resources and some processes that are totally non-digital, we can kind of change the way we do business. So it's as much work as all of this is over this past few weeks and the next few weeks going forward. We do have the chance to see some good things come of this, I believe. So we need to keep on the pressure to achieve. I know that in many districts, school is not closed. The buildings are closed, but school is not closed. School is more than just assigning work and scoring work, and then assigning work and then scoring work. Or I should say, school should be more than just that. School is a rich learning environment that has multiple resources for kids to engage with, different ways they can demonstrate their knowledge and their ability. But on top of the actual academic work, there's the collaboration that happens all of the time, whether we know it, whether we build it into lessons or not. There's communication, there's that social bonding and interaction. If we were to create a super sterile environment that just boiled it down to activities connected to standards and the scores they get, I would guess that for many students, school would not be a useful place for them. We need to make sure that we keep learning open, even if the school buildings are closed. So when you hear people say school is closed, feel free to point out that it's actually not. The buildings might not be closed, might not be accessible now to meet in. But if we set things up correctly, school just continues on. We need to keep that urgency. We need to keep that pressure to achieve. If you have high expectations, if you had high expectations a couple of weeks ago before you had to close your building, you should still have high expectations now. Day to day, that might look a little different as you're all learning different systems and different procedures, but you don't lower the bar for your students just because things are different. So again, the three components that when I was thinking about collaboration, I've learned a lot myself in the past couple of weeks, having our schools closed in Denver. I've learned a lot about how teachers have historically interacted with their students and had them interact with each other, as well as the tools within Empower that have always existed there that we never honestly started implementing fully. We never felt the true need to implement some of these tools and processes and procedures until we were pushed into the situation. So we're going to talk real quickly about this synchronous, asynchronous, and the parent and guardians, families collaboration, both within Empower and as how we can connect outside resources to our learning environments that we're creating. Okay. Writers, workshops, and support. This is a huge, very powerful tool that I've seen teachers implement in their remote learning. Many of you are probably familiar with this. It's not a brand new idea, but you have a teacher and or a leader and a learner in the same Google Doc or the same Microsoft Doc online or whatever platform you are using. And you are live editing. You can even do this with an audio chat open as well. You can live edit and you can discuss and break apart their work and go through it as if you're sitting face to face with them. I know personally, my wife is a tutor where we live here, and she has moved all of her tutoring to online support and online tutoring. And she does exactly this. She shares, the students share their Google Docs with her. They have to go through the process of setting up the sharing and everything. The nice thing is that when we do this in Empower, we see all of these documents directly that have been submitted if we want to get into a doc that's been submitted. But when we're actually making the activities and we add a Google Doc as a resource for the students to open, by default, it's going to make that copy for that student. It's going to rename the file and add the student's name to the name of the file as well. It will folder that away into their Google Drive for them, so it keeps their drive all nice and clean. And it automatically allows the teacher to have access to that document. So by default, we're able to swap our share settings, very similar to what happens in Google Classroom. That was a great improvement they made to online learning when they brought Google Classroom on board, but Empower mimics that example exactly. So you assign this Google Doc and you instantaneously have the ability to jump into it to set up these writer workshops. Maybe you have a 10-15 minute session with each kid throughout the week where you really give them some serious one-on-one support. We do a lot of, I'm hearing a huge number of teachers are holding face-to-face meetings, and this really falls in the synchronous category of things that I've seen implemented in conjunction with Empower. And those face-to-face meetings, as you are aware, are happening over Google Meet. If you are a Google district, you can get that for free. Some people are using Skype if they're definitely more of a Microsoft-focused district or school. And then our darling, which I'm sure everybody has heard of recently, is Zoom. And I would throw my hat in the ring for Zoom as the one that many of the teachers that I work closely with, I imagine they will be using Zoom as we move forward. They've just positioned themselves. They have a great product, but they've positioned themselves with some educational tools. The idea that you can pull breakout rooms in Zoom, so you can start with your large class instruction, break into small study groups, instantly kick kids into various study groups, and then bring them back to the large class again, all within that same environment. I'm seeing teachers use this for not only their face-to-face instruction, where they have a whiteboard on the wall. I saw a picture of a teacher standing in their shower in their bathroom, fully clothed in their teaching attire, using the shower as a giant whiteboard, broadcasting that through Zoom to their classes. So you're able to have those lectures and those There's times where the students can ask questions back and forth. It might be every morning at 9, when your class normally meets. The first 15 minutes of that, it's additional support, or those are your office hours for those students to check in with you and ask questions. It might also be those social interactions, those things that might not fit cleanly into something you would normally be doing in school. I know some schools where they have yoga classes every day for the students. Kind of hard to find the time for the whole school to get together to do yoga in a face-to-face environment, and the school, quote unquote, is open. But when the building is closed, we aren't necessarily limited, and our face-to-face meetings can be a little bit different. So they're having an open yoga class for any student or parent that wants to join in with their physical education teacher to start their day. Just wonderful days to reinvent these face-to-face meetings. And these are third parties. This is not a built-in part of Empower. To reinvent the wheel as a company and build this software into the system doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes sense to leverage these third-party sites and these third-party tools along with Empower. And the way they are doing that is pretty simple. Sometimes the simplest way is the best. And most teachers that I am seeing that are doing this with success, I've seen third grade classrooms that have nearly 100% attendance in their meetings. That's fabulous. And these aren't students who are, I should say that many of these students are students who struggle possibly with money and resources at home. And they have felt this desire to learn these new systems and to interact face-to-face because it is important to them as learners. They have this community in school, and the teacher has realized that and is really pushing that community online. And so these teachers are pushing out messaging to their students through Empower. They will message the class, maybe every morning, maybe once a week, whatever their schedule is for communicating with their learners and with their families. They're pushing out these links, and they're seeing huge participation. I have included on the bottom of some of these slides some resources that might be helpful. There's one about Zoom breakout rooms on this, as well as Zoom safety. If you're not familiar with the settings in Zoom, please take a moment and read through that blog post. Make sure your teachers have as well. There are some high-profile cases of Zoom meetings that have gone awry when people have wandered into it and decided to screen share stuff they shouldn't. So please be aware. It can be very safe, can be very useful. Just make sure you know what your settings are on any of these when you're going forward. Also, please be aware of restrictions in terms of making recordings that include student video and audio. Please check with your district to make sure that you're following proper procedures there. So asynchronous. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happens asynchronously that falls into this umbrella of collaboration. The one that we have learned the most about these past few weeks has been messaging. We have always known that you could theoretically click on the messaging icon for an activity, and it would pull up a thread that the students and the teacher could participate on, and they could talk back and forth all day long. Honestly, it was very underused, and our teachers never really put a lot of effort into learning that or expecting kids would use that when they were meeting face-to-face every day or every other day. It just wasn't a necessity. And this is one of those things that now that they need easier ways to interact and message each other, they've started taking this on. So now they have big, long threads for various activities for their classes and for their groups. They've got the all-purpose message board there where they're doing class polls and things like that. The teachers are really realizing that the messaging, they don't have to go hunt and find it throughout Empower, that it brings it to them. They have their notifications that pop up. It will bring up all of their current messages that are unread, or you can choose to see all messages. And from there, it's a pretty easy way to actually communicate with your students across space and time. The idea that we don't all have to be online at the same time in order to communicate. And this can be as rich as you want, including videos and files and whatever you want in your messaging. It doesn't have to be a quick back and forth. Our teachers are also finding that the students more and more are starting these conversations. In the feedback tab of every single activity, by default, there's nothing a teacher needs to do to turn it on. The student will have the ability to start some feedback, a dialogue with the teacher. This is the only case, in case you're wondering, this is the only case, the only time where a student can privately message somebody else is through an activity here, through to the teacher. A student is unable and empowered. There is no way that a student can privately message another student. People like that safety net there. Students can message a group or an activity chat, and everybody can see it, so they are public or semi-public. A teacher can individually message a student can individually message a teacher. And all of these chat histories and all of this messaging is all searchable on the back end by the administrators in case you do need to follow up with some concerns that you have. Our teachers with messaging also believe they have found a new tool. The ability to create and distribute and analyze polls right in the messaging. And again, these polls can be delivered to an entire class, to just those students that are working on an activity. And it's pretty simple. You give it a title, you give it a question, you come up with some responses. You can add and remove responses, so you can have as many as you want. But then there's some additional power that's there where you can make all these responses anonymous. By default, it's going to show how each individual student voted their response in the poll. You can allow students to, so you can hide that if you want. You can allow students to submit multiple answers, or you can hide the results. So you as the teacher see the results, but the students don't. So there's a variety of ways you can do this. If you want to have a quick, simple ticket out the door at the end of the day. So the expectation is every day, the last thing they do before they log off for the day is they check their messages and they look for any polls from their teachers to respond to. It could be something as simple as, how did your day go? Checking in with that personal, social side of things, not always the academic side of things, and that is totally fine. And this is a great way to do that. When they see the results, they're just displayed in line in the messaging tool there. So you can see in this case, the names were not hidden. So there are some names available, so you can see who voted for each one. Again, sometimes you need some lighthearted, funny things to vote on. It doesn't always have to be academic, because if we just strip school down to purely the academics, it's not always the environment that our students and our learners and honestly our teachers need. We need to connect with each other. And this is one of those ways that you can do it with very little effort on your part. We do see a question or two coming in. Sean messaged in the chat there. If you have any questions, go ahead and submit those in the question tab. He will go through those and kick them to me to give my best stab at answering those there. Another way that asynchronous collaboration and communication happens in Empower oftentimes goes unseen. It's happening. We might not be leveraging it to the level that we could or should. And this is the activity status indicators. We oftentimes will think that a student will turn in the work, we score the work, we give them their grade, and we move on. But every time we score a piece of work for a student, based on where they are, even before it's scored, based on where they are and how they've interacted with this content, they have a little status indicator here. Now, when they mouse over these indicators, it's going to bring up exactly what this means. It could be that they have not yet turned it in. You got a little student working at the desk. It's overdue. So when a teacher sets a due date, when the due date comes and goes without the teacher putting a score in, it could be overdue. If they have submitted digital work, but they've yet to receive a score, they would get this turned in. It's a great thing where they can say, well, I've washed my hands of this and I'm just waiting for the response now. If they've either turned it in or not turned something in, either way, if they get a score of some sort and it doesn't meet the goals, the maximum achievable score that has been set by the teacher says, I expect them to get a 3 on this work. They only got a 2. Well, they'll see this arrow. kind of indicates that, yeah, you've got it done, but you might need to revisit this. That's when you'd want to have that conversation with the student, or the student would have the conversation with the teacher to figure out what their next steps are. Hopefully we're seeing a lot of stars. The stars indicate that they actually submitted this, and there was a score given by the teacher, and they did exactly as the teacher expected. They hit that goal score. If the student asks for help, if they're going through the activity and they click the need help button on the teacher side of things, they're going to see a question mark in the scoring tools. So you know that these are kids that you need to circle back to quickly. And the dreaded missing. If a teacher actively scores work with an M as missing, this is a real clear indicator that the expectation was this should have been done. It might be overdue, but there might be extenuating circumstances where something is overdue and not yet marked missing. But when the teacher marks it missing, that is a real clear way that we can communicate to the students and to the parents. And so when we think about this, it really makes the idea of scoring student work more and more important, to make sure that we set those goal scores so we can really communicate to them, this is what I expect of you. This is what we expect to see when we score this. It makes it real clear why we would want to set due dates. If we have expectations that students are going to have this done by the end of the week so they can move on to the next component, we'll set those due dates so that we can have those indicators appear automatically, so we can work and collaborate with our students, and so they're real clear where they are in their learning. And if we don't score things as missing, it might be something that you want to consider doing, because that sends a real clear indicator to everybody. It gets everybody on the same team and understands this is a real need right here that we need to address. It's a way for us to communicate and work together without having to draft that additional message on top of things. So specifically, parents and guardians. When teachers are busy, in my experience, this is one area that I have seen slip before in traditional environments. We're busy. We've got overloaded classes. We've got so much stuff we need to work on, and learners that need our attention and our support. And sometimes, we might be guilty of not necessarily supporting all stakeholders as fully as we could or should. In these days, we found it's more important, both with our work with Empower, my work with Empower, and my work in Colorado, that if we don't support our parents even more than we ever have, that's going to be the weakest link in the chain of all of us working together. Because now more than ever, the collaboration is not just between the parent and the student, or the teacher and the student. The parents are that third leg of the stool there now more than ever. It was always good to keep the parents informed of how the students are doing, but now parents are involved more often than not, it seems like on a daily basis, with what's going on. We've got parents who feel that they are homeschooling their students, which shouldn't have to be the case. We as teachers hopefully can figure out ways to deliver stuff so parents can be there for that support. And those additional resources if possible. But we need to make sure that we are supporting parents so they don't feel like they're in this alone with their kids. We do have some resources from the parent side. I think I see Catherine in the chat asks if we'd consider new parent videos showing this information so we can push it out. I know that Ben has made a few videos targeted at students and parents, I believe, and then one for younger ages as well. Ben's going to add those links there. But if at any time there you do find something like that where there is something that we're just missing in a parent video that we should add, let us know. And we would love to be able to re-record those and make those more efficient. Sometimes it's because tools have changed since the last time we made the video. Other times it was just an oversight. I do want to say it might be useful. It takes a little bit of time sometimes to take our videos, if you don't want to record your own, and record your own audio over the top of it. Sometimes hearing familiar voices and hearing references to things that are particular to your situation are what your parents need. So that would be one consideration as well for supporting your parents. And then consistent communication. If we're going to be collaborating with our parents and our guardians and our students, we need to be consistent with our communication. This is not constant communication. I am seeing interesting things online with all of my friends and their experiences through this that they're posting about on Facebook, and it's really people are in two different camps. They are pleased or they are extremely frustrated. And the extremely frustrated ones, it's because they're getting no communication or very little from their teachers in their schools. Even a few weeks in, getting very little, or they're getting too much. I know one student, somebody we know here where we live, who is about a year six, a sixth grade student or so, and is a struggling reader and is struggling with this, with everything being put online for her to read and digest and figure out what to do. Feels like she's on her own, but luckily enough, her teachers are emailing her. She gets about 30 emails a day from her teachers. You can't be bombarding them with emails because it just creates noise. And we need to make sure that those emails from the teachers are coordinated with the emails from the school, are coordinated with emails from the district. Make sure that whatever you set in place, you follow it so parents know what to expect. If we just had start and end times for traditional school that just kind of changed every day whenever we felt like it, that wouldn't work. And if we're expecting as parents to get a message every Monday morning with an outline of what should be done throughout the week in Empower, or what the expectations, or maybe just what the new activities are and some guidance. If we don't get that on Monday, then we're lost as parents. So make sure you're consistent, whatever it is, however you set it up. Maybe it's that daily message sent to your class through Empower, checking in, offering some guidance. Just be clear and consistent. And if you are emailing your parents, if you aren't aware, assuming you are syncing your parent information into Empower and you're bringing over your parent email addresses as well, in every roster for every class, there's a button that says Copy Guardian Emails. You press that button, it'll say Copied. Please paste into the BCC section of your email. If you've got 42 kids in this case here, it will copy over, assuming there are email addresses for all those parents. It will copy over all of those email addresses for all of the parents connected to those 42 kids. And then you can send that email out. Please be careful about the BCC. You do not need parents replying all and replying to each other or seeing each other's email addresses. But you do, as the teacher, the teachers in their roster tool, they do have the ability to easily start that email thread with those parents there. From the teacher side, from the student side of things, we need to teach our parents that this class log is going to be helpful for many of them. They want to still see what work has been done. Not only are there a notification that there are 3 new scores that have been entered somehow for this kid, for this class, but when they click on it, they want to see what that is. They want to see the, it might be the overall score. It might be an actual activity that they did. You notice you see these indicators next to it. Those are the indicators we talked about before. So you would see just a brief, here's these 3 things. And then here is the more detail when you click into it. Again, these tools aren't new. In fact, these tools haven't even been retooled at all to help support this distance learning. These are just the tools that we have found that if we have not done a great job of supporting our parents and knowing how to use, they're going to feel like they are on their own. And we do not want our parents to feel like they're on their own. We need to feel like we're collaborating and we're on a team more than ever with our parents now. So finding these essential tools for the parents so they can stay involved is going to be more important than we've ever seen. Communicating missing work. I know some of you have this feature turned on in Empower right now. Empower has the ability to, let's say, weekly send home an email, and it will auto create this email for you based on any activities that have been identified as missing in the past week. On top of that, it can include a list of the account of 5 outstanding activities in math beyond this last week, 6 in science beyond this last week. So you can see a running total of where they're sitting for the whole semester. This is something that if you have on board right now, or if you don't have it on board, it might be something you want to consider bringing on board at some point. But if you don't have this feature turned on, this is something that you might want to take another look at, honestly. I know the district that I work with in Colorado, we have honestly put this on hold for right now. We hope to bring it back on, turn it back online here real soon. But until we get things worked out in terms of access for our students and making sure every family has access in our district, until we are sure that our teachers feel confident working in this remote environment, just as confident as they did in the classroom environment, we're holding off on this missing work. We don't think it's a lowering of the bar. It's just a refocusing our efforts, and well aware that this is something that we will bring back on board as we continue down this path. Just wanted to point that out in case that was something that you have on board that haven't even considered yet. We point this out in every webinar that we do. Every time I talk to people, I point this out. You should have a little question mark. It is probably a little bit smaller than the one in this image here at the lower right corner of your screen in Empower. When you click on that, it will open up our portal to our knowledge base. You can search there. You can find popular articles, recent articles. Every new thing that we add will appear here for you guys. Ben has shared some links to some videos there. If you looked for, some of those keywords there, parent video, it would probably appear in the search there. So you can find any resource there. Any resource you find here would be publicly accessible, so you could share it with other people. You could share it with parents. You could download the video and remix it yourself if you wanted to. Any of our PDFs or images and things like that you can include in whatever supports you're able to provide to your community, whether it's your teachers, students, or parents there. So please make sure you check that out. And if something is missing, let us know. We want to fill that gap as quickly as possible for you guys. We have a few questions that look like they have coming in. Can you post those Zoom links in the chat? Yeah, we'll make sure that we do that as well. What we'll do is we'll make sure that this is turned into a PDF and you can have those links. Might need to send that afterwards, but we'll make sure that you get those there, Alex. Honestly, if you Google Zoom settings admin, you will find a lot of resources that Zoom has. And Zoom breakout rooms, again, they've got some videos showing exactly how that works. So those are just resources that the Zoom company provided. Those are the ones that I included there. But we'll make sure that you get those. And if anybody ever wants to try a Zoom party and try some of those out, let us know. I'd be more than happy to find that time to help you guys out with that. Do we have any other questions? We can throw them in that question tab. Let me scan through the chat here. These have been very polite. It looks like Sean is adding those links to the chat room there, the breakout link one. And it looks like he'll probably add the Zoom setting one there as well.
Kevin, one question here that came in. Can messaging be turned off for entire segments of users or for specific users?
Hopefully you guys are all doing well. Hopefully you're probably hitting some bumps in the road like everybody these days. But if there's anything that we can do, anything that we can think about, I know that one of those things that we'll probably share here in the near future is the that self-assessment tool for teachers, self-assessing how they're doing this remote teaching environment and what they can do to improve and the things they can think about. That tool that I'm developing for Westminster will be something that we will do our best to make available to all of you guys through the Empower side of things as well. We have a question here. Can messaging be turned off for segments of users or specific users? I'm not sure. Ben can maybe chime in on our behind the scenes chat here in terms of segments of users, but yeah, definitely for specific users. We have an admin tool, the social networking side of things. If you again get into our knowledge base, and there's a whole video walking you through how you can both dig in and search for messages made by individual users as well as restrict users. So let's just say someone's hit that third strike and they need a timeout from there. Then we have a video showing exactly how to do that, again, in the knowledge base there. But in terms of segments of users, I'm not really sure about that there.
I don't know if Kevin can hear me, y'all, but I think you can. And the answer is yes. You can turn off segments of users and individual users. I'll post that video here in the chat now.
Ben's provided that link there. It does look like we were talking over each other. Some of us can hear each other, some can't hear. So it's a multi-pronged audio issue that we are dealing with there. Any last minute questions? We again will make sure that these videos are webinar videos and all these resources are available for you guys. If you have any additional questions beyond this. One more question coming in. All right, looks like that question is handled behind the scenes there. If you have any additional questions related to anything we talked about, and obviously anything else as well, Empower related, remote teaching related as well, we are not here just to support the buttons you click within Empower. Empower is part of a larger ecosystem. We're well aware of that. And that's an ecosystem that you guys are probably figuring out, might be changing day to day. Let us know. Let us know what we can do to help support you guys. Reach out to Sean, Sean at empowerlearning.net. His phone number is available there as well if you need to call him and talk to him directly. We apologize for the audio issues. We will obviously have to regroup and try to recreate this on our side of things, and hopefully we'll be all set to go and everything will be running smoothly when we see you guys next. Thank you guys very much.